I'm on camera.
All right, everybody. So welcome to Pixels and Pieces. This is our third meeting, and today we will be talking about game art and the process of creating game art, some of the issues that come up while working with game art. Today we have with us Darrell Louder. He is a very prolific game designer, especially when it comes to game art. He's worked on over 30 games in the last 5 years, including Floating Market, Tiny Epic Kingdoms, Spirit Island, Alien Frontiers, and most recently Dark Rock Ventures. And he's designed 3 games, Compounded, Geiger Expansion, and Bottom of the Ninth. And as well as he's also the director of Unpub, which is the Unpublished Games Network, which is an organization dedicated to helping people get their games published. Currently, he's working full-time with Panda Game Manufacturing and pre-press specialist. Oh, sorry, as a pre-press specialist. So please help me welcome Darrell Louder.
Hi.
All right, so Darrell, could you tell us a little bit more about the game art process and a little bit about that part of the industry?
Sure. Typically, let me get my words. With board game art, it's kind of like doing freelance design with pretty much anything else in the marketing, and you need a client to reach out to you, and as soon as they do, you do a good enough job, you pretty much stay in it. That's the nice thing about the board game community, is it's very tight knit. You do a good job for one person, they're going to tell their friends. So one publisher will tell another publisher, and they'll, so on and so forth. And so that's how I quickly went from doing one job and exploded to doing a bunch from a bunch of different publishers. Mainly my role has been graphic designer. I've dabbled a little bit in illustration here and there. But I personally am more confident in my work, and I also enjoy doing graphic design more than illustration. So, yes. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry. Jeremy, earlier, it's weird talking about myself.
That's all right. When making game art, for example, art for cards, are there considerations you have to make? What kind of things do you have to discuss with the person who's designing the game, and what kind of things do you take in consideration?
Obviously, the very first thing you have to take in consideration with cards is the border. You're only going to have a limited amount of space, unless you're going to do a full bleed card, but those are so rare because you have to have hidden information. So if you do a full bleed art on the edges, then it's potential when it's stacked, you can see what cards are what, especially when you get to play the game enough. So most cards, like I'm looking over here at a pile of stuff, like Magic the Gathering, it's hidden information, so they have all black borders or all white borders, as the earlier sets did. And so that's when it's in the deck or in a hand or you're rifling through, no one exactly knows what you have. You have that 3mm border that's just a nice, safe color that's universal. And that's the one thing is you want to have. Obviously, the next thing is the card size. If you're going to do a poker card, which is 63 by 88 mil, or a 70 by 70 square card, or even like the mini Euros or whatnot, that comes into consideration. And that also then affects the type and icons that you have to use within that card, because you need to still make sure that they're legible. But the biggest thing, short of all of that, is the art that goes on it. Typically, you're going to be supplied art on the card. doing graphic design for a game, it's why I said it's fun, is because I look at it as my job as not to compete with the artwork that's there. So if an illustrator is hired to do, hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of work, and I'm coming in, I don't want to overpower what they've done. I want to try to figure out a way to either complement it or even highlight it even more. So all the icon design and everything is based off of the initial of the game and the artwork for the cards, and it kind of helpfully lends itself to it. If you look at a game and the border or the font or the icons don't match the artwork at all, then in my opinion, you've had a bad graphic design, not a bad artist. So, yeah. But with cards, with cards, you and this is just a design tip, always stick with the rule of threes. So when you're going to print, a printer always needs 3 millimeters of bleed, 3 millimeters of margin. So it's 3 on the outside, 3 on the inside, then put all your content. So, yeah.
All right, are there any aspects of designing cards, like layout-wise, or the way things are lined up on the card that is fairly uniform through the industry, or that needs to be done, or often needs to be done, that you encounter?
That rule of three, that's kind of what I've come up with because I've worked with four different printers, and they'll vary if they're going metric or if they're going US measurement, but strong, but they're usually always, hey, we need 3 millimeter, 3 millimeter, and the whole point of the margin is when the cards are going through the die cut machine, there's a chance that the blades can shift up to 1 millimeter. And if you have a 2 mil margin, you're going to really notice that off-center shift. Whereas 3 millimeter, you kind of get a little bit of forgiveness with that. So, and that's kind of the golden point of that. The other thing is always build in CMYK, always. And let's see, what else is the standard? Oh, if you have black text, make sure that's in pure black. So, you have this CMYK, the 4-color process, and C should be 0, M should be 0, Y should be 0, K should be 100%. And that's called pure black. And the whole point of that is when the printer is going through the plating process, only the last black plate has the text. So you don't have to worry about these 4 colors lining up exact to make your letters crisp. It's just that last plate which will ensure it. So.
All right, so talk a little bit about content in art. I know there's a lot of issues sometimes with text and art balance and iconography and that sort of stuff, and the way it's placed on the card. Can you speak a little bit on that?
It depends on the art direction for the game. I've done some where and I'm really ashamed to admit it, where I've centered text. And I hate centered text. I'm very much a fan of left aligned. I feel like everything should be. But sometimes when everything is so central, or if the publisher's like, I want it centered text, well, I'll give a little bit of an argument. Like, it's going to be really difficult to read. It's harder to parse. But ultimately, whoever pays the bills is whoever's going to get the final say. So he's like, nope, want centered? You're like, okay, centered it is. You just get it done. Yeah. I'm sorry, what else was the question?
Just art and text and iconography, any considerations in layout and design, and how those work together?
Well, like I said, definitely when you're doing color, if you're doing black, make sure it's pure black. But how they go together, it's just make sure you always choose a typography that's legible, very easily legible. If someone has to read it 2 or 3 times, don't. Even if you think it's fantastic. So usually, like with some games, Princes of Florence comes to mind. I don't know if any of you have seen that one. But all the cards in the board has like this unique handwritten font, and it's a pain in the ass to read. It's terrible. It's a great game, but reading anything is just a nightmare on that. And yeah, so make sure you want to keep with something clean, simple. Usually a sans serif is usually the best typography, but sometimes if you're doing something older, you kind of want that serif to kind of give it a little bit of age. So yeah, and then with icons, there's different ways of doing icons. Well, typically, I'm sorry. First of all, I build everything in InDesign, everything. Please don't use Photoshop unless you're editing a photo. Don't build your rule books, your cards, and stuff in photo. Anything you're printing, again, short of a photo, don't do in Photoshop. It's just going to make your life so much more difficult. But I was going somewhere there with the InDesign thing. Yeah. Wow.
Use InDesign for data merge. Is that your primary reason for using it?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. If you're doing cards, the data merge part of InDesign. Thank you, Jeremy. The data merge part of InDesign is just it's going to save you so much time, and the fact that you're going to have a spreadsheet with all your card text and illustration, direction or locations and everything in it. So you can, number one, make sure you have everything organized that you need. You build one template, just click create merge. Your cards are done. Then you just go by card, and you're just doing small tweaks at that point, as opposed to copy paste over and over and over again. Your icons, I do things a little bit differently than some other people, and that's all my icons or any art pieces that I create that aren't painted out, I do in Illustrator. And so icons I'll build out.
All right, we're breaking up a little. Can you
Illustrator one color and copy block? Yeah, from which part?
I'm sorry, it's still. Give us a.
No.
All right, all right. It looks like it's cleared up. There it goes again.
Awesome. This is great.
Right. Okay. It looks like we're good. So beginning with the when you said with icons, and then it cut out.
Okay. I create all icons in Illustrator. One color. Always one color, unless the icon's very large, but typically always a one color. And even if you do a multicolor one, you always want to do a one color version. It's very much the same for doing logos for company branding and stuff, which I used to do way back in the day. So what I do with logos, that I've had a few people disagree with how I handle it, but it has always worked. I've never had an issue. And that's where I'll build the logos in Illustrator. Like I'll make a Scratch AI file, and I just call it Scratch AI, but that's where I do all my doodles and builds and such. And so I'll copy the logos and literally paste it within the text block in InDesign. So it's actually part of that text block. So if I resize the text, the icon will resize with it. It spaces out perfectly, so it still sticks to the kerning rules. It's just so much easier. Excuse me. Now, the pain in the butt is if someone's like, "Oh, I don't like this icon," you got to change it, and you got to go, on over everything to change the icon as opposed to just a placed icon. But it's still, for me, it's just so much easier just to do it that way. And typically, I try to get all the icons approved before I start dropping them into cards. I try not to surprise either the publishers or myself if I'm doing my own game with like, "Hey, look, I just decided to go this way. So what do you think?" Because there's nothing worse than having to go back and undo everything you've done. Yeah.
All right. So we've talked a lot about cards. When it comes to creating a board or the play surface or the box, how does that correlate?
All right. Sorry, the first half of that was cut off.
All right. So
I am sorry.
That's all right. Let's give it a few moments. Okay. So we talked a lot about cards and the design process for that. How about game boards or the game surface, whether it's the tiles or that sort of thing? How does that differ?
Yeah, they're each one of those three things is handled differently. The box, the game boards, as well as a board, for instance. And that's always going to be handled differently based on the printer itself. But typically, most game board. Do I have a game board? Okay. Oh, geez. I forgot how many bits are in this thing. Most game boards are pretty simple. I mean, usually with a game board, it's going to be all art. And you're just going to start adding in spaces where all that needs to go. Very few boards I've worked on is where the board is majority graphic design. Typically, they're all art, and you just incorporate, again, the graphic design within it. One is Dark Rock Venture board. Unfortunately, I don't have an image of that here on this machine. But with that one, it's just a space background with some asteroids, and it's a dice placement. So the entire board is covered with little squares for where to put everything and different resource centers. So there's that. But typically, serving here. But so this is the game board for bottom of the ninth. So it's all art with the exception of the outs tracker and the fatigue track here. And then obviously the bases are what's in use, but that was part of the art. So boards are simple, super simple in that manner. You just need to know the dimensions. Is all printers, when you go to print a board, will ask for a large amount of bleed. And again, bleeds what's outside the cut line. And I know with Panda, sorry, it's 18 millimeters on each side, so 36 total. And what the point of that is it actually wraps around the edge, and then they'll put this adhesive back on it. And all printers do this. But the whole point is so you don't have a raw cardboard edge, so it helps lengthen the lifetime of the game board, as if you're going to be playing your game like hundreds of times, which would be incredibly rare. But that's with game boards. With boxes are fun because you get into that 3D element. It's now all of a sudden you're not doing a flat card, you're not doing a flat game board. You have to account for the sides and all that. Like, so if you're doing artwork, do you want the artwork to completely wrap around the sides? Do you want it to just be on the front side to do like a different treatment? Yeah, I have a bunch of examples here. So like Paradise Fallen here, like the artwork was just for the front, and then the sides I had to do a different treatment. So I just used different grabs from different cards to do the sides. And just like with the board, there's an inner wrap on the inside of a box to protect the edges. But typically it's all art, and then it's just adding in the graphic design. The box back is...
All right, we cut out again. Give it a moment.
The majority of work for graphic I'm in, you
All right, it's still
have to sell the game on just the back in the swings. Hey. What's this saying? I got a warning. Oh, it's my network that's experiencing difficulties. Of course it is.
All right, it looks like we're back again. So you
Of course it is.
went into the back of the box, and that's where it cut out. So
Yeah. Okay. The back of the box is where doing graphic design for a game. This is always the hardest thing, and that's because your job here is to sell the game in just this allotted space. Like that's it. Up here, publishers don't want a bunch of information except for the title and their logo. But on the back is where they're going to want everything to push it. And typically I've had publishers give me the copy for the back. Sometimes I've had to fluff it up, which I don't have a problem. I used to be a marketing director before I got into games. And so a little bit of experience helps with that. But they're going to give you a bunch of stuff like, hey, I need this 2 paragraphs of legalese down here, and we need to make sure the UPC in this is there. And then they'll give you like a 1 page of text, like, can you fit this on the back of the box with a copy of the game setup and all that? And you're like, no. No. Unless this box is somehow massive and I've been doing everything wrong. No. So, yeah. The biggest at least my biggest pet peeve of doing anything board games, even my own, is the rule book. I hate rule books. I loathe them. I hate writing them, and it's even worse doing the graphic design, because that is the one bit that's always nitpicked the worst. Because if I design
All
the
right.
game and gave it to you guys, so if anything's presented, like, okay,
Almost. You moved.
I have like 150 up and down. I don't get how I'm having issues tonight. I've never had issues.
All right. So you said you dislike creating rule books because it's the thing that gets nitpicked the most, and that's where you cut off.
Yeah, and nothing's worse than when I did a great job, and then all of a sudden like Board Game Geek forums blow up, like asking questions that should have been explained better or should have had better example images, and they'll tear you a new one. Like, they don't care, and you feel bad because you're misrepresenting the game, the publisher, and such. And it's just, I'm good with cutting and pasting and coloring. I'm not good with words. Letters confuse me. So yeah, but rule books are always the hardest thing. But the big thing about rule books, and is always stick to multiples of 4 when it comes to pages, because of how they're saddle stitched, which means staples down the center fold. And so when you have it and you open it up, it's page 1, page 2, 3, 4, and then so one sheet of paper makes 4 pages. Hence why everything needs to be multiple of 4. So.
All right. So you mentioned with cards that you mainly use InDesign. You always use InDesign. Does that carry over to boards and boxes and game manuals as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything I send to the printer, I've built in InDesign. Everything. It's just the compression for PDFs is far better in InDesign than anything else. If you make an image in Photoshop, make an image in Illustrator, and make the same image in InDesign, and then export each one of those in PDF, you're going to see like 36 meg, 38 meg, 6 meg. And it's just the way the InDesign compresses it down, and it's just pristine quality. So always InDesign. If you don't know InDesign, it's so easy to learn. Just, yeah, you can pick it up in a day very easily on your own.
Okay. So are there any examples you have of either graphic design or art issues that you've encountered with games that stand out, that maybe are common in the industry?
Yes. I'm trying to figure out how the political way to answer this. I've worked with publishers that are cheap, and when starting off, obviously you're not going to put up like a large price for a job because you're relatively new in the board game industry, and they're going to be like, "Well, I don't know, you kind of got to prove yourself." But sometimes when it comes to art, because with art you have to get a bunch of pieces, so they'll go very cheap on art. And when you're starting to do graphic design, you're looking at the art, and I worked with some games and the art is terrible. It's so bad. Like, my 5-year-old son could do better. And you have to dumb down your design, because if it's too good and too clean, it's going to clash. And it falls right back into what I said earlier. It's like everything you have to do has to complement the art. And like there's one specific artist, I'm not naming names, there's one specific artist whose work I can't stand, but people continue to hire him. And I have a weird ban list where I won't buy anything that his artwork is on the cover for, because it's so ugly. But it's but I've done five games where he's done the artwork for. And it's just, I've never been proud of those projects because I don't like the graphic design, or how I had to just dumb it down. or add like textures in that I'm not a really big fan of. So, I mean, granted, when it's all said and done, the whole package looks okay, but it's still like, for me, being very, very visual, and I'm assuming you guys as well. Like when you see bad art, you know bad art. It's just bad art, and yeah, I guess my job on those is all of a sudden to make the graphic design look okay, still complement the art, but try to get it to where other people go, wow, that's really bad art, so no one ever hires that guy again.
Yeah. All right. So when working with the developer or whoever the designer for the game themselves, what kind of information do they typically give you when you first get asked to do the art project, and how does that conversation happen?
You mean from the designer?
Yeah.
I've very rarely spoken to the designer. Usually it's always through the publisher. And I'll work with the publisher one-on-one. Every now and then they'll pull the designer in when it comes to a question. But typically the designer and publisher already have a shared vision when they go to spec out the work. And so that kind of makes it very easy. I've done Skype calls. I've even taken my laptop to conventions and like actually found the publisher, and they'll like, oh, here's the game designer right here. And I'll just show them and immediately get feedback. And usually it's really nice. That's the nice thing about, I'll just do like, hey, here's a card game. We need 8 different decks that have eight different designs. So I'll do like 1 or 2 of each of the decks, just as in like 1 or 2 cards in this deck, 1 or 2 cards, and send it out. And I try to find like the wide range. Like this one has the least text, this one has the most text, and the most text ones are always the funnest to work with because that tells you, okay, this has to fit within your card frame. Everything less is going to be far easier, obviously. So I typically try to go with that or the most complicated looking card, and then shoot them off to the publisher, and they'll share stuff back and forth. So yeah, I mean, I've never had a publisher or a designer be like, well, I'm not going to help you or give you information that you need. I've had some designers send me prototypes, or publishers rather send me the prototype of the game, and that's the best, is when you can actually learn the game from just a really crappy prototype, and while you're playing it, you can actually draw on the cards like, oh, this would look so much better here. So then all of a sudden you have your idea of the direction that you want to take with the graphic design, because you know how to play the game. You know when you're playing it what you would like to see. And yeah, typically if you have the right instinct, then, or if you have the instinct of how it should go, then your instinct's usually going to be right. But the publisher may say, hey, I want the icons on the left side because I want to favor left-handed people, and they rifle on the left versus the right with like right-handed designers, or is it the other way around? It's one of those ways. So, yeah. Typically, all my interactions though have been, for the most part, incredibly positive. So, very, very, very rarely has it been a negative experience. And even still, even like the worst one that I've had, it was strictly a professional thing, and he and I are still really good friends, but we both have an understanding that we'll never work with each other again because it's just butting heads. So, and that may be a comfort thing of the fact that we're friends, and so I feel like I can say like, no, that is a really bad idea, and get argumentative. So, and yeah, that's most likely my downfall, but there's that.
All right. Is there any other advice you'd give new designers, people who have never published a game before, when it comes to designing the game and specifically with the art?
Go on BoardGameGeek.com and find a game that you like, and usually there's pictures of all the components if you don't have the game, or even if you do have the game, that's fine. And redo it. Just for you, just for fun, just on your computer. Don't print it and sell it. Don't be dumb. But, design it for fun. Reimagine it. And and then post it on BGG like, hey, I just did this just for fun. What do you guys think? And the publisher's going to notice. I mean, the publishers and the game designers, we watch Board Game Geek like a hawk, and we have everything subscribed and tagged that we usually have our hands on, and that stuff makes it through, and those designers do get noticed, or those illustrators do get noticed. And yeah, I mean, the other thing is if you have a friend that's designed a game and he's about to get signed, just twist him or her to like, come on, let me be the graphic designer. That's how initially I got in. So yeah, I had a friend of mine that designed a game that never ended up getting published, but it was the first one that I started doing work on, and then that publisher recommended me to someone else, and that's where I just took off. So yeah.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Darrell?
Earlier when he was discussing icons, he said one color. Did you mean monochromatic or just a single tone?
Well, typically, like with icons, typically just one color, period. If you have to bring in white or another color, but I try to keep them as minimal as possible. So like text, where I'm saying text should be pure black, I design my icons in pure black. There's exceptions to the rule. So like Dark Rock Ventures, the entire scheme for the game is blue, orange, and white. And so I stick with just those three colors for everything. And it's in space, so obviously black's not going to work there. But everything is those three colors. And yeah, it's just be very, very minimal, especially when it comes to icons within your text. People don't need to, the main reason for that is obviously colorblind. If you have a purple icon that's this and a red and blue icon over here, well, a colorblind person is not going to be able to tell which one's which. I mean, obviously your shape's going to be different, but the colors just is lost on them. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Specifically with colorblind designing, is there anything like with colors that you would avoid? Or is there a specific way to figure out if something is going to negatively be affected for colorblind?
Double code everything if you can. So if you have a colored icon, give it a unique shape as well. If you don't do colors that are so close together, you can't do. Right. You can't do like black text on a dark green background. Something that's going to be typically difficult for you to see if you're not colorblind is going to be near impossible for someone that is colorblind. Actually, there's an app on the iPhone, and I think it's on the Android. It may not be, but it is called Colorblind Viz, VIS, and it is real-time simulator of colorblind. So you actually choose which color blindness you want to test it on. And, if I click this, let me read the back here. So as you can see, everything's just kind of a little bit, the color shift is going to change. And that is really awesome when doing graphic design work. So I'll even hold it up to the screen because the colors are going to be close enough, even though the screen only displays RGB. But it'll let me know if I have colors too close together. But typically, yeah, make sure they contrast each other well enough. So, and also be wary of inverted text. It is difficult to read for people that have issues reading without glasses. Difficult for people that read with glasses. Sorry. And yeah, obviously smaller, it's just gonna kind of get lost. Inverted text, I mean white text on a black background kind of thing.
Yeah, you had a question?
Well, I guess so you've designed some games too. Like how does graphic design influence your game design? I guess because you're talking about a lot of people who are designing games, do graphic design, having designed a couple of games. Do you design while designing times?
I do it the worst way possible, where all my prototypes have to look the best that they can, so it drags everything out. Other designer friends are like, "Why not just do the scribbled hey, here's a test?" And I'm like, no, because when I'm putting something out that I want feedback on, why not get feedback on the look of the game as well at the same time? Because they're going to give you the mechanics for everything. So, for Bottom of the Ninth, it's a baseball game, and so I designed the cards to actually look like old baseball cards, where we even have the square corners, and the backside sticks with the monochromatic color scheme like the old Topps cards. And that was just something that I'm like, I really need this to happen. And so when I'm designing even my own stuff, it has to be within more or less how I envision it. But my publisher, which all my games have gone through, Dice Hate Me Games, he's been like incredibly accepting to that. And he's just like, great, you got this? Show me what you got when you're ready to show it to me.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, here it is. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yep.
So, how would your design process change for, say, like the mini size Euro cards versus a normal size card?
It's funny you mention that because I'm actually working on a game that needs those. It's a little bit difficult. Number one, make sure that you're doing them all the right mini Euro card dimensions. I did the entire deck, and then I realized I did them all as bridge size by accident, so I have to redo them all. But it all comes down to the text size. When it comes to the mini Euro, the text legibility and the icon legibility kind of has to trump the art at that point. And the art's going to be so small that typically it's not a big deal if you have to make it even a little smaller to fit the text. So on those, like with most cards, it's about 2/3 art, 1/3 text. With mini Euros, I find you typically have to flip it. So it's 2/3 text, 1/3 art. So, and that's to keep it at a decent size. Typically, I will never go under like a 9-point font for reading, because at that point, it's just you're going to need bifocals or a magnifying glass to read. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I could have questions all day. So do you have any like examples of games that you thought have been like amazingly like good graphic design, and then maybe some examples of games that you don't think have great graphic design, or maybe you don't want to mention those?
All right, I know one that is very popular, and I've been very vocal about bad graphic design on it, and that's both Race and Roll Through the Galaxy. I don't know if any of you've played that, but it's got this player blind, and on the back side, everything's for some reason just effing rainbow colored. Like literally, there's an icon that is all 7 colors of the rainbow, and it's no reason why that needs to happen. And it's just text on the back. It's not formatted nicely. It makes the game look far more confusing to play than it really is. And everything else about it is fine, but that player guide, the player blind, the backside of that, is just garbage. So it's so mean, but it's so true. Good graphic design. Oh, Takedo. Takedo, if you've seen it, it's a white box. The board is like 80% white. It's very minimal design. It's like this Asian, it's very heavily Asian influence, but it's gorgeous. The art, the graphic design, everything about it is absolutely beautiful. It looks like something that Apple and Cupertino would have done, but with like this very Asian flair. It's just so beautiful. They're not afraid to use the empty space, and I really, really like that.
Anybody else?
I'll keep asking questions if nobody else does, or however long you've got. This is interesting stuff. So what is Unpub? Because I guess I feel like you're part of the organization. I want to ask about it.
What?
Yeah.
It's an organization that was started. It'll be 6 years in January, and it started here in Dover, Delaware, and it was just to get aspiring game designers together to work together on their games. So everyone would bring their prototype and play it with themselves, as well as we'd open the doors to the public to come in. So the first Unpub had 6 game designers, and I think we had like 18 people coming in, and it was typically friends of the designers, and it was still a lot of fun. And so we did another one the year later, which we called Unpub 2, and everything about it doubled. So it was great. We had 12 designers, and we had like 30 to 40 people coming into play, and we had people coming from that weren't like friends or family to any of the game designers. So we're like, all right, well, maybe we have something. Let's go for a third one. And third one exploded. We had like 300 people that were just playtesters coming. And the designers, I think we had 40-something designers. Unpub 4 followed pretty much the same thing, except we were very close to, if not a little bit over the maximum capacity for the room that we had rented out. And this is also in Dover, Delaware, which Delaware, it's like the armpit of New Jersey. Like it's just like this tiny thing. And we have no airport that's short of Dover Air Force Base. And that's the only reason why we're here, pretty much. Which, fun fact, it's the world's largest morgue. Hey. But yeah, there's no airport to fly in on. So you have to fly into either Baltimore or Philly, and then it's an hour and a half drive to Dover. And that turned out to be an issue with Unpub 4. We grew so large that we're like, well, we have hotel space, but that's also a 20-minute drive from the venue because it's Dover, and we've got effing nothing around here. So at that point, I was like, we need to make a move. So Unpub 5, we moved to the Baltimore Convention Center in Baltimore, Maryland, and we topped over 1,000 people for playtesters. We had 62 game designers, and that's because I limited the tables. Richard Lanius was our special guest that came in, as well as Mike Fitzgerald. And so that was that, and that was a 8,000 square feet venue. And so for Unpub 6, we're having in April, and it's going to be a 14,000 square foot venue. We have Eric Lang, Rob Davio, and Richard Lanius coming back. We're expecting over 2,000 people in attendance. And it's the whole thing. It's like the tables are just game designers. So, hey, I have this game I'm working on. You'll purchase your ticket, your designer ticket, which gives you a table for the entire weekend. So it's your table. You do what you want. Dress it the way you want. No one's taking it from you. Think of it more of it's a booth. So you have a 24-inch by 6-foot booth, and that's where you're showing off your games. And then the playtesters are free, and we very much open to the public. We advertise the hell out of it in the area, like, hey, bring your whole family, because we have games that range from for 8-year-olds to play all the way up to whatever. And it's become a very, very big thing. And now we do convention support, so we're at Origins, we're at Gen Con, we're at the PAXs. At BGG-Con, I don't know if any of you guys are going to be there. Unpub is running Proto Alley at BGG-Con, and it's designers show up to play test games, and that's it. So it's just we bring in the playtesters, and then the publishers. Like, we have a lot of publisher support now, so publishers always show up, and they'll play the games, and that's how a lot of the games get noticed, or new designers get noticed, is through Unpub. So we've had about 60 games in the almost 60 years signed up from Unpub that potentially would have never been published. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
Thanks for asking.
Anything else?
I don't know what our schedule's like. I didn't ask questions so you kick us out. But so I guess I mean, I'm not like great at graphic design or anything like that. So how much do you think a person should budget if they're trying to like hire a graphic designer for a board game? I mean, you can talk in rough estimation.
It depends on the resume of the graphic designer, and also the amount of work there is. So like for a small card game, it's going to typically be a smaller fee. But to do like a big box, like Brewcraft or something like that, like to do everything with that, it's going to be a much larger fee. And I mean, that makes sense. You think about the amount of work and time that you need to put in. So the very first game I did, and I have no problem telling you numbers, was Dice Safari. And Dice Safari is 70 by 70 square cards and little 1-inch by 1-inch tiles and some dice. And dice is you just make the icons and build out the flat dice template and just fill in where the icons need to go when they construct the die. And that was, I think I did that for 800. So that whole thing, and that was my first one. So I mean, that was everything. And typically that fee, my process is I get 50% up front and 50% once the printer has approved everything and it goes to mass production. So once that, then I get the other half and we're done. So if you need me for revisions or whatnot, great. We can talk about that when it comes to it. As in like for second editions or expansions. But typically that's how it works. I know a few that have done hourly, and I find that kind of weird. I'm more of the bulk price, like, hey, this is how much it is for all of it. Because at that point, I should know everything that's included. And if it goes on Kickstarter and they're like, oh, we're going to unlock this whole new deck of cards, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. That's new to me. We need to talk about it. But I've never had a publisher get upset by that. So it's just be open. And I would always say dump more money on art than you do graphic design. Otherwise, you end up with really terrible art guy. So, yeah.
All right, we can probably do one more question before we wrap anything up. Does anyone have any?
All right, I have one.
Okay.
Yay.
All right. Actually, for the two women that are in there, are you game designers, graphic designers? No, the reason why I ask is because at Unpub, like, the biggest thing is obviously at the end when you have a convention, everyone always nitpicks, the diversity of everyone that's there. Minorities, sexes, blah 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 blah. So I'm just curious because that's really awesome. Like, it's like, wow, cool. This sounds so weird and stupid now that I'm saying it, but you kind of get what I'm saying, I hope. So, yeah.
So, like, why are we here?
No. Like, well, yeah, I guess. Are you there as graphic design? Are you there for game design? Like, yeah.
Well, we actually have, like, a project where we're having to, like, create our own game. And so, I mean, I have, like, no insight. Like, I'm going to school to be an interior designer. So I know absolutely nothing about board games. So as you inform us, that's super great, but I know nothing.
Hey, that's fine.
There's a lot more to it than I thought there would be.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, the amount of things that you get to have fun with and doing the art and design for a game is cool. Like, coming down to, hey, the wooden bits I think should be this big and the color scheme should be this size. You can get pretty anal. Like, again, this is all my game, but still, it's an example. So, like, for this, like, bottom of the ninth, I designed base runner meeples to go in the game. I wanted to, typically most publishers, you get free reign. Like, hey, we need iron or cobalt and plutonium in the game. Figure out icons and how you want the wooden stuff to look. And it's like, all right, cool. Get to design all of it. The color scheme, the shapes, the whole 3D part of it is fun, which we didn't even get to touch on. But yeah, typically a publisher is going to give you carte blanche. So, yeah. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you out. I was like, hey, that's awesome. So.
Yeah, we have a blessing this year of having a professor who's had two of our classes do a board game design for the class. So luckily we have the program here that we can get people in to talk about it and help them in that process. But as a matter of fact, today I played Unpub, the card game.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I can't remember, Doug
Levinovsky.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because that's a great system for just brainstorming and coming up with whatever crazy things you can possibly imagine.
Yep. And that's part of the reason why Chris, Dice Hate Me Games, published it. It's because, yeah, it's a fun game, but it's more of like a tool. So, like, if you want to get into game design, it's an amazing exercise. And it's just, it's silly, but it's just, it kind of gets your brain thinking. So that's another one I did the design work for. Fun fact about that, actually, the card back is shows like your design contract. That's actually JR and Doug's contract. That blue bar covers up other important information. So that was a fun little thing I did for them. So yeah.
All right. Well, that's about how much time we have for the talk. So thank you so much for coming, talking with us.
Hey, my pleasure.